If you were going to do it all over again, would you do things differently, knowing what you know now?
Probably, absolutely. Like I never really thought about home ownership until I got married. Even while I was engaged, I wasn't really thinking about it. It was on the back burner. I was dealing with getting the wedding plan, paying for all of that, and when it came to buying a house, it wasn't even really a thought.
Welcome to Real Stories in Real Estate with your host, Denise Laframboise. Real people sharing real stories about their adventures in real estate.
So welcome to Real Stories in Real Estate, a podcast where we talk to real people about things that they've done and what they've learned from their own experiences in real estate. I'm your host, Denise Laframboise, and today we have Chris Lynn with us. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, Denise. Glad to be here.
Thanks for doing this. So we're going to talk a little bit about buying our first home. So I wanted you to just tell me a little about what you remember from when you bought your first home.
You make it sound like it was so long ago, probably because it was. So my wife and I, right after we got married, that was 2010. We're living in my parents' basement, which was not ideal. My wife was really prodding and prodding, saying, hey, we need to start finding our own place. So we started looking, just looking for the sake of looking. Our budget at the time was about 250 is what I wanted it to be. And we started looking around the Markham area, and there was a few houses. I mean, back then you could find homes for 250, 280, but they weren't ideal. I mean, some of them were like these 3-level homes backing onto a train. Some of them just were really dilapidated and needed a ton of work, which didn't really deter me because I'm fairly handy. I used to work as a contractor way back, so I didn't mind doing a little bit of the work. But we really couldn't find anything, close to the roads, or they were just too far out, or something was just wrong with the house. So after doing that for, I don't know, we did this probably for like 2-3 weeks. We finally said, okay, look, we got to up the budget. Let's go to 300 and let's expand our view. And that's kind of what our realtor said too. He's like, if you're willing to drive an extra 10, 15 minutes, have you thought about going up to Stouffville?
Yeah. You know what? We say that to people all the time. Like, let's set up your budget and then you just drive until you qualify, right? Like in the GTA, you just drive out of the city until you qualify, right?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, Markham, mind you, I know a few people that have bought in Markham and they found the diamonds in the rough, but it's just about timing, finding that house when it's up for sale, when you're ready to buy at the same time. Yeah. So we finally found this house, our first house up in Stouffville. And I remember you walked in and it just reeked of cigarette smoke. Like it did not show well. So
it didn't say to you, I'm the one, buy me.
It didn't say that, but apparently it was on the market for a little while. But aside from the cigarette smoke, everything about the house was fine. It was relatively new. It was only maybe 5 years old at the time. It was a semi-detached, so we just shared one wall with a neighbor. Had a one-car garage, 3 bedrooms. Pretty small. I think it was only like 1,650 square feet, maybe 1,700 square feet in total. The entire house. No fences in the backyard. That's how new the property was, but it just reeked of cigarette smoke. So my wife's like, "Oh, that house is great, but it stinks." I'm like, "Well, I mean, cigarette smoke. We can probably take care of that." And she's like, "What are you going to do?" I'm like, "We're just going to bury it all in paint. We're just going to paint the house head to toe. We're going to wash everything, wash the walls, wash the floors." I even painted the floor joists like underneath in the basement because they used to smoke in the basement.
Oh my
apparently. So yeah, but that was our first house, and we bought it for a little over $300,000 back in 2010, and we moved in February. I think it was like February 14th or 15th, something like that. And yeah, we spent the first week of the house painting, cleaning, and you know what? I think the lesson learned there was sometimes you have to be able to see past the flaws in the house and realize that, with a little bit of elbow grease or a small investment, you can really make it your own and make it into something that, suits you.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of first-time buyers, they're looking for their dream home. And you really often need to look for your first home, like your stepping stone home. And maybe it's not going to be perfect or have the most beautiful kitchen or whatever it is, but it's not that much work to do small things to improve it, right?
No, exactly. And we sold that house probably 4 or 5 years later for almost double what we paid for it.
Yeah.
Right. And now we're in the house that we're in now, which is 2,600 square feet. So we've got a little bit more breathing room here. And again, too, I don't think this is our forever home, right? It's just another stepping stone until we find that next house, which I'm hoping will be the forever home because, moving, the family's grown. I got 2 kids now. So there's a lot more things to move around, a lot more toys to pick up and move.
It's funny. I don't know if I'll ever have a forever home because I'm always like, oh, if the market's changed, let's sell and let's get more money for it or whatever. I'm okay moving. My husband's a military child, so he moved so many times that every home is his forever home. Like every home, I'm like, hey, look at what the market did. Let's sell. And he's like I have to stay married. Really, like.
Yeah, no, I'm not afraid to pick up and move right now. Right now, we're in a good area, though. I mean, family and friends are close, but definitely if the opportunity ever arose, especially with the way the market is today, like prices it's pretty enticing to sell. It's just where are you going to move to? Right.
But
That's
if
always
you
the next
could
question.
sell, I have so many people right now that are selling and then buying a bigger home, but because they've made so much on the home that they have, you're almost the same cost to live in something bigger or something, in a little more desirable area, right?
Yeah. What would you say are the hotspots right now in the GTA or outside the GTA?
Anywhere you can afford. It's crazy in the 905. Everything is crazy in the 905 areas. I think when people can work from home, instead of needing to be as close to work in Toronto, Scarborough, in, Thornhill, now you can move out a little more. You can get a little more house, somewhere where you want to raise your kids. I love downtown, but if you don't need to be there, if you're within a decent commute, you can get more house for your money, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like for myself, I was always used to commuting up to an hour. Like that's kind of my limit. I'm okay with an hour drive. I have some friends that I guess they get so used to the downtown lifestyle that anything further than 10, 15 minutes, they're like, it's too far.
Oh yeah. No, honestly, I remember when we moved to Whitby and people were like, where is that? And I'm like, guys, I live on Highway 7. Like Highway 7 goes past Markham and people were like, are you sure? Right. But truly, when we moved to Whitby, I didn't know where it was either. We were living in Newmarket at the time and Gabe was commuting to Whitby, which was a better commute than when he used to go downtown. And I just knew he went east somewhere. I didn't know how far it was. I'd only been here to come to the passport office.
It's true. I ate my words when we moved up to Stouffville because I laughed at all my friends when they moved up to Stouffville. I'm like, you're moving up to Snowville? Like, that's so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, 2 years later, I'm up there with them and they're like, what are you doing up here? I'm like, I couldn't afford anything else that I liked.
And it's so funny. I think when we bought in Newmarket, even you drove past farmers' fields to get to our house.
Yes.
It was not super developed. There was not a lot going on yet in York Region. It's really funny. Even when we bought in Richmond Hill, actually, to drive up from North York, it was like you're still driving kind of through farmers' fields. Like all of that development wasn't there yet.
Well, I grew up in Markham, right at Birch Mountain Steels, which there's a giant TNT plaza there. There's like Pacific Mall's walking distance for me. But when I grew up there, that was all farmland. That used to be massive field farms, and we used to walk over there to buy corn.
So funny, right?
And now it's almost like history repeats itself. I live next door to a farm field. I can walk down to the organics and buy corn, and RSIRE farm is for now. That's what my parents keep telling me. They're like, remember when we lived in Markham? We used to live around farms, not anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And we see it everywhere, right? Like as the city sprawls out a bit. It's very interesting. So let's go back to, when you bought your first house, how did you decide on your budget?
I just picked an arbitrary number, to tell you the truth.
Right? Like I don't remember doing a pre-approval. I don't remember asking for a lot of advice as to what that number should look like?
Yes. Yeah. I had no idea really what I was doing. I just went with a family friend who was a mortgage agent. He knew a realtor, and he was actually pretty good. He kind of steered us in the right direction in terms of, look out further. Don't look at what the house looks like now. Think of, what a little fix up could do to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the lesson that I learned from that is, you need a house, for me, with good bones, at least a good structure. Like for me, I want more land because the land is always what you have to work with, right?
Yeah.
Once you have it, you can't get any more really, unless the neighbor sells and you can merge it somehow.
Right. Well, and even with the house, right? If the bones are good, like you can renovate, you can paint, but if the bones aren't good, like those are the expensive parts, right? The stuff you can't fix.
Yeah. Coming up with a budget, I just kind of looked at what houses were going for, and I was like, okay, let's try and stick to the 250 range because I think we can get something around that price. Didn't do any math, had no idea.
If you were going to do it all over again, would you do things differently, knowing what you know now?
Probably, absolutely. I never really thought about home ownership until I got married. Even while I was engaged, I wasn't really thinking about it. It was on the back burner. I was dealing with getting the wedding plan, paying for all of that. And when it came to buying a house, it wasn't even really a thought. What I would do differently, definitely try and put away a little bit more for the down payment, I think. In terms of looking for a place, I don't know if I could do a whole lot differently. I would have liked more land, but again, it's a stepping stone. I think the real key is just get your foot in the door, right? Yeah. Find something that you're comfortable with, realize that it's your first home. If you're the first time buyer, it's not going to be perfect, right? Like you don't need a mansion, right? You can't afford the mansion anyways, probably. Just get something that, suits you and think of it as like a training home, because maybe home ownership isn't for you, right? I know friends, they buy houses and, they're not very handy. They don't like mowing the lawn. Maybe you're not a homeowner. Maybe you should go back to a condo.
Yeah. Or hire a lawn service.
Exactly.
My regret is always like, we should have bought more. Like we bought our first home for $279 in Richmond Hill. Why didn't we buy the neighbors for $300? Like when you think about what those homes go for now, well over $1 million, why wouldn't I have owned two?
True.
Right? Like think about, like you bought in Stouffville, if you could buy another house for $250, like think about what your net worth would look like now.
It'd be ridiculous.
Right?
I'd be retired.
And we kept our first home, bought our second home. And I always help like young buyers. Like if we can keep that first one as a rental, like the impact that makes on your net worth, even if you can only do it for 5 years, is huge.
For sure. Especially the way the real estate prices have increased over the last 10 years right now, they've tripled.
Yeah.
Easily.
Right. So that's always my regret. Like, why didn't we buy more? Like, what were we thinking when you look at what things are worth now? And you ask any homeowner, it's like the best investment they ever made was typically their house, right?
Oh, for sure.
The safest. You mentioned down payment a little bit, and I just wanted you to touch on that because I don't know if people know, but Chris is a very good financial planner and insurance person at Sun Life. And I wanted to ask you a little bit RSPs and first-time buyers.
Sure. So the first time home buyers program, it's a great little gift that the government allows you to access your RSP money for a qualifying property. There are some regulations around that, but for most people, you'll qualify as long as you haven't owned a home in the past 5 years. So if this is your first house, you can qualify for that program. They've increased the amount. I think it's up to almost 40,000 now. 35.
Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, 35,000, tax free, essentially. You do have to pay it back though, but you have 10 years to pay it back. Right. And if you don't make your payment, so if you owe them $3,000 that year, basically that portion would just go on your taxable income. So even if you don't pay it and you're just taxed on that money, it's not really that bad of a deal. Right.
And people have to keep it in for a certain amount of time before they can use it, right? So if it's tax time right now, we are often talking to people who maybe want to buy a home in the next 6 months or so, and they might put RSP money in this week in order to get the tax refund. and then they can go buy a house with their RSPs. But how long does that money have to stay in the account for?
Ooh, you're asking me some detailed questions that I don't remember right off the top of my head now.
90 days.
It is 90 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it's not a full year. You can do it pretty quickly. I usually say 6 months, but it can be sooner. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, a lot of times people don't accommodate for actually the time it takes to transfer that money out too, right? It might not be 90 days on the dot. It might be, some admin and paperwork days or a week or something beyond that, depending on what it's in and how easy it is to access.
Yeah. I always tell clients, plan for a week to do a transfer. It's supposed to take 3 days, but it could take 4, it could take 5. There really is no penalty to the financial institution once the paperwork's submitted, as long as it's being processed. And sometimes it comes over as a check, right? So that takes another day. Yeah.
So if people have questions about financial planning stuff, insurance stuff, or they just want to chat more about buying in Stouffville, maybe, how can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn for sure. Would be probably the easiest way for most people. Just type in my name, Christopher Lynn, Lyn. The other way is to locate me on Sun Life, right? My webpage there is sunlife.ca/Christopher.Lynn.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me today. So I'm your host, Denise Laframboise, and I appreciate Chris being here today and sharing a little bit about our nostalgic buying our first homes. If you want to check out more episodes of this podcast, you can see them at www.deniselaframboise.ca or Spotify, Audible, iTunes, wherever you find your podcasts. So thanks for tuning in today.
All right. Thanks for having me, Denise.